So I've mentioned dysbiosis a couple times, and some of you may not know what that means. It is just, it's a fancy word just that means the imbalance between healthy and unhealthy bacteria, meaning you have more unhealthy versus healthy. So I have a little animation here if you want to just look for 1 second, because it only happens one time. See? Oh, and I hit the button too fast, but it balances back and forth. It's kind of cute. Okay. The gut and its microbiome related to the central nervous system. This paper is basically saying that there is a bidirectional network between the gut and the brain, and that and that some of the information that gets passed in the brain gets passed through the blood-brain barrier, as well as through the intestine. And we don't exactly know how all of this system works yet. This was written in 2017. So we're still working on figuring this out. And this was looking at, again, the human gut microbiota in quality of life and depression, and saying that their results provide population scale evidence for microbiome links to mental health, while emphasizing that there are confounder importance. And that human research is lagging behind animal models, which is always the case. This was a study that was done with germ-free animals. So they bred them to not have any kind of germs, and then they exposed them to pathogenic bacterial infections, to a probiotic or to an antibiotic. And they found that out of those three groups, that it suggests there was a role for the gut microbiota in the regulation of anxiety, mood, cognition, and pain. So the emerging concept of a microbiota gut-brain axis suggests that the modulation of the gut microbiota can be a tractable strategy for developing therapies for central nervous system disorders. This was a study that was done with lactobacillus, and this is the research that really shows you what I was talking about with that medical illustration. So this was a study done with rats, and what they had some rats who were some rat pups, and they had two groups of rat pups. They had one group that they separated from the moms for a few hours every day on days 4 to 19, and then they had a control group that they did not separate. So they got to snuggle with their mom the whole time. And what they found was that there was an immediate and long-term change in intestinal physiology. There was a reduction in lactobacillus in the rat pups that were separated from their mothers, and therefore an increased adhesion and penetration of bacteria in those pups. And then they gave them lactobacillus in the form of a probiotic, and they found that by giving them the lactobacillus, the more stressed pups who were separated from their moms actually got better. It ameliorated the anxiety induced by the abnormalities in bacterial adhesion and penetration, and it reduced their cortisol levels. So cortisol is the hormone that is secreted when we are stressed, that from the adrenal glands. So they were able to measure these things and identify that by administering lactobacillus, these pups actually settled back down. So they found that the probiotic improved gut dysfunction, at least in part by normalizing the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis activity. So that's that. The adrenal glands are part of this three-part HPA axis, where the hypothalamus and the pituitary get this information that something's going on and that the adrenal glands need to secrete cortisol. And then they do that, and the body has this whole response to stress, and then gives information back up to the hypothalamus that everything is okay, we can settle back down. So it's a feedback loop. And so by reducing the cortisol levels, they were able to identify that the HPA axis was impacted by giving them probiotics, which was in the gut. This was a study done with L. rhamnos, which was another probiotic strain. And they did this with mice and looking at GABA, which is a neurotransmitter that we all have that helps us to feel calm. So when we are in fight or flight, we will make GABA, which helps us to settle back down. And so this research was looking at that, and they found that there was a reduction of GABA in the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. So remembering the amygdala is involved with emotion, survival, and memory in the midbrain. There was an increase of GABA in the hippocampus. And additionally, there was a reduction in stress-induced cortisol and anxiety and depression-related behavior. They also found that the neurochemical and behavior effects were not found in vagus mice. So that means that they cut the vagus nerve, and then they found that because that feedback loop wasn't available, that there was not the behavior change that was there when they gave them the probiotic. So together they said that this helps to highlight the importance of the bidirectional communication of the gut and the brain. So in summary, our data with L-rhamnose suggests that the non-pathogenic bacteria can modulate the GABA system in mice and therefore may have a benefit in the effects of treatment of depression and anxiety. Now, I can tell you when I was in school getting my master's in 1982 through 1984, we were not talking about gut health at all. We were talking about Rogers and Piaget and Freud and Jung and learning how to do reflective listening, and all of that is super important. But we also need to understand that if we have a client whose gut is out of whack, and they have, let's say they have irritable bowel syndrome, or they have irritable bowel disease, or they have a gluten sensitivity and they don't know it and they continue to eat gluten, they're going to show up in our offices with anxiety and depression and other mental health issues. And no matter how much reflective listening we do, we can't treat that. So we have to be able to treat both. We have to be able to identify somehow, if, even if we have to refer them to another practitioner to get testing done, we have to start identifying what else is going on. Why are they feeling anxious? Why are they feeling depressed? What is happening at a cellular level that is creating this issue for them? Bifidobacterium longum, or B. longum, this was a study that was done with chronic colitis, and it was associated with anxiety-like behavior in mice. And they found that the anxiety behavior was absent in the mice that were veganized. But B. longum normalized the anxiety behavior, but its anti-anxiety effect was absent with the mice that were anxious and veganized. It also, B. longum also decreased the excitability of the enteric neurons. And this is a study that was done with mice, and they found that this was done with mice who had stereotypical autistic type behavior, like not high functioning people, not the kind of people like that we would used to call Asperger's, but people who were really on low on the spectrum, who were non-communicative. They were able to create these mice that were doing a lot of self-stemming and non-communicative. And one of the things that they found was that by treating them with the human probiotic Bacteroides fragilis, that they were able to correct the gut permeability and alter the microbial composition and ameliorate the defects in communicative, stereotypical, anxiety-like, and sensory motor activities in these autistic behavior mice. So in other words, the mice improved in many of the stereotypical behaviors of autism and improved in their gut functioning. And that is an important thing to understand, because a high percentage, I shouldn't say most, many of our clients who have autism have gut function issues, probably about 70 to 80%. And that's a very rough percentage. I have some slides in another presentation that's got more of the statistics, but a very high percentage. And most of them have at least one. Some of them have two, some of them have three or even four different kinds of gut issues that are going on, which can impact their brain health. This was a study that was done with humans. It was done with women, and they took healthy women, and they didn't have any GI issues, they didn't have any psychiatric issues, and they were put into different groups. So one group was given a fermented milk product, and I don't know what kind of milk they were given. I don't know if it was kefir or yogurt. I don't know what it was. One group had a non-fermented milk product, and then one group was the control and had no intervention at all. And they were given this. So what they did was they had the women come in and do a fMRI, and they looked at their brain. And then they gave them their different interventions and sent them home for 4 weeks. And then they brought them back and they looked at their brain a second time. And in both times that they looked at their brain, they were stressing them. So they gave them I think they had them look at some faces that were kind of scary and got them kind of activated, and then looked at how their brain responded. And what they found was that the women who had been on the fermented milk product, so we can assume that their gut had changed and that they were eating a fermented milk product. It affected the activity in their brain regions that controlled processing of emotion and sensation. Now, this was a small study. We had 12 people, 11 people, and 13 people, so a very small sample, but still, I think an interesting study showing that just by populating the gut with by using a probiotic milk product, that they were able to change the brain's response to a stressor. This was some research that was done looking at food coloring. So red food dye is one of the most prevalently used food dyes in our diets. It's in a lot of things, and not just things like candy that is red, but also it's used, for example, in, I have some supplements sitting on my desk, some supplements to make them green. I'm pretty sure that mine does not have red food dye, but like this is green, so it potentially has red food dye in it. Sometimes pickles have red food dye in them because it makes the green look greener. It can be found in obviously candy, but also in lots of foods, processed foods. So this was looking at animals, of course, but they found that chronic exposure to this particular red dye promotes susceptibility to colitis. And so they're just saying that chronic long-term exposure to a common synthetic colorant promotes colitis and impacts serotonin by impacting the microbiota. And so, again, asking our clients these questions about their gut health, whether they're going to the bathroom or not, what it looks like when they go, do they have diarrhea, are they constipated, how much processed food are they eating? All these questions are very important in terms of how we treat our clients.